So you should now have a set of tools that you can use to create a solid outline drawing of almost anything that you want to draw. So the next step now is to convert that line drawing into something that looks more solid and three-dimensional. Now, one of the simplest ways that we can do this is with the use of contour lines. And contour lines simply give the viewer extra information about the object's form and any undulations across its surface. So in these two images of a hand, the drawing on the left has been left as an outline, a basic outline drawing. And on the right, I've added a series of contour lines to help describe the surface and the solid nature of the palm and the fingers. And contour lines in and of themselves, I think, can result in quite a pleasing style, but their real value comes from helping you to understand the structure of the objects that you're observing. So what I'd like you to do now is go and grab yourself an apple, preferably a green one or a light coloured apple, a pen, a biro is fine for this. You'll need a pencil and a piece of paper. And all I want you to do is find the point on the top of the apple's surface where it feels like it drops sharply in towards the stalk. So if you run your finger, you can imagine that this whole top surface of the apple is relatively flat, and then there comes a point where it dips sharply into the stalk. And with your biro, just draw a line, a circle around where you think that point is. Only has to be approximate. Okay? And then same on this side, where it feels like it drops sharply away around the outer edge, just draw a line around there as well. Doesn't have to be too neat. So all that we're doing here is just breaking this round surface into very distinct faces or planes. The next thing to do is to draw some vertical lines from the base of the stalk all the way down to the base of the apple. So again, be as neat as you can, but don't worry, that line is going to be a wavy line. You're not going to get it straight by any means. And then twist the apple round for the next one. And then again. And then last one. So I've probably got about 12 vertical lines. Somewhere in that region is perfectly fine. And then find the center of the apple, and we're going to draw another horizontal line. This would be the equivalent to the equator all the way around. Bonus points if you can make it match up the other side. Okay, there we go. So now all you're going to do is place the apple towards the top of your paper, about 12 to 18 inches away from your eye line. And from here, we can take a pencil and just draw the outline of the apple. So to start with, I'm just going to do a very simple oval just to give myself a reference. And then a good tip here is to break things down into straight lines. So I can see a definite straight line from my vantage point here. And then it goes around here, and there's another straight line here. And it's much easier to see these straight lines than it is to see curves initially, at least. And then there's a nice straight edge at the top and around. And then just mark in a point in your outline for the base of the stalk. So if this, to my vantage point, is the top of the apple, this is the bottom of the apple, where does this point appear? And I would say it's probably about a third of the distance down. So 1, 2, 3. So it's somewhere in that region there. So what essentially we've got then is a funny shaped circle and a dot, and it looks nothing like an apple. From here we can start to put our contour lines in. So let's put this first one in, the one that we drew initially. So just observing where this line is in relation to the base of the stalk. I'm keeping my head nice and still, and I can see that this line is quite close to the base in this point, and then is quite far away from the base at that point and quite near this outer edge. Okay, and I don't need to get the shape right, just a rough indication. And then this next one, well, it disappears from where I'm looking from, the back edge there, and it actually doesn't come back into visibility until about this point. And then it comes around to about there. Okay, and then we can put some vertical lines in as well. Now, another good tip with the vertical lines is to get your curves is just to ghost your pencil over the top. So this line here is actually quite straight. Although I know it's a curve, from my vantage point it's quite straight, and I can actually measure it with a pencil as well. So taking it from the base, and it's going slightly off center, it's around about there. So this next one now, again, goes the pencil over, just to give yourself an indication of that curve. Intersects the bottom about there. This next one now, I can only see a relatively small portion, and I'm also noticing at this point how it curves sharply in towards the base of our stalk. So curves sharply in there, comes over the top, and disappears around about there from my vantage point. The next one, very short line and a relatively straight line, but it does come in and drops all the way down to the bottom. This line here is a straight line. And then we can just go around, just carefully observing where each line goes in turn. Okay, and then the only other one to put in is this center line. Now when we drew this on our apple, it was right through the center, right through the equator. But again, from my viewpoint, this line actually looks very close to the bottom. I'd say it's about the total height of the apple, it's about 3/4 of the way down. It's actually appearing in around about this region here. Okay, and then just to add a little bit more realism, let's go ahead and put the stalk in, and I'm just going to observe, just because it's always good to make these observations, that the stalk doesn't actually encroach above the line of the apple. That might look slightly different to you on camera, but this top edge of the stalk is meeting and kissing this edge of the apple. So let's go ahead and put that in there. Okay, so what you should end up with is a drawing that goes some way at least towards looking solid and three-dimensional. We haven't used any shading, just a series of lines to describe to the viewer the form of this apple and the way that it looks from our vantage point. Now it's the same with this example. So all I've done is draw a number of contour lines around the banana that are equidistant apart. But on my drawing, what you might notice is that those contour lines towards the far end of the banana get closer together. And that's simply because the vantage point that I was looking from introduced quite a bit of foreshortening, which is an element of perspective that we'll be looking at later on in the course. Now to get this vantage point, all I did was set the banana up on a box at around about eye line level, and that way I was looking right down the line of the banana. So in the last example, let's go back to the drawing that we saw at the start of this lesson of the two hands. What you'll find in your course materials is some outline drawings of hands and some reference photographs to go along with them. And what I'd like you to do is have a go at adding some contour lines to those outline drawings. You can add them to the printouts, you don't need to draw them from scratch, and use the reference photographs as a guide. Now remember that the best way to approach this is to break things down into those planes, those flat planes. So for example, if I'm going to draw my thumb, and we just draw a rough outline to work with, what I can do is I can break this essentially a cylindrical shape into two definite flat planes. So this plane here has got an angle to it, and so has this one here. And the break point is somewhere along the line of the nail. And then what I can do is I can just add straight lines for now, just to give an indication of the angle of that plane from my vantage point, and the same this side here. And then we can make those into curves to give the sense that it is cylindrical. And then let's just add a bit of a thumbnail just to give it a bit more of a sense that it's a thumb. Okay, and that is so much better than, if this is our cylinder shape, than simply just adding arbitrary curves to fill in the space. Because while that does describe a cylinder, it doesn't really tell us anything about the way that cylinder appears from our vantage point. So have a go at those exercises in the course materials, get yourself really familiar with those contour lines, the concept of contour lines, and then when you're ready, come back and join us in the next lesson.